was accused of being a sinful little girl for simply wanting to sleep with my boyfriend. I had never heard those words spoken to me before, not even by my mother. We were in our own master bedroom, settled into the life we built, and all it took was an afternoon visit from my parents to turn everything sour. They arrived expecting us to shrink away from any adult intimacy, forcing a confrontation over where my boyfriend should sleep, on the couch, on the floor, or right beside me. The argument escalated quickly until they left, leaving me heartbroken and accused of something I hadn't even done yet. But that text message, it didn't capture everything. There was another conversation, a private one, that changed everything about how I saw the situation. If my family believes this is so wrong, what exactly are they afraid I might be doing? I remember that night so clearly. The air in the house felt thick with unspoken judgment. It was our cozy living room, filled with the scent of stale potpourri and my mother's disapproval. My boyfriend and I had been building a life here, brick by careful brick, everything feeling right until they arrived. Everyone wanted us to just keep the peace, but what we really wanted was to be left alone in our own home. Mom kept repeating that he needed to sleep on the couch, like we were still kids who couldn't handle their own feelings. It was suffocating. My stepfather tried to smooth things over, telling us all to calm down. But when he cleared his throat and looked at me, there was a flicker in his eyes, a look I didn't recognize, like he knew something about the timing of this whole visit. He hadn't been quite as gentle before. We had built a good life for ourselves, paying our own bills, sharing a space we actually loved. It felt solid, predictable. I remember thinking how lucky we were to finally be here, building our little world. When my mom and stepfather arrived, it was just a temporary inconvenience. They could stay in the guest room, nothing more. Everything felt normal, even comforting. My boyfriend seemed so relaxed, making those small jokes with my dad about the garden when I wasn't looking, and my mom, after all her initial protests, kept her mouth shut for most of the evening, which felt like a huge victory. We were safe, and we thought that meant we had achieved some kind of adult grace. But then he reached out to adjust my hair, and in that moment, I saw his thumb brush against a tiny, nearly invisible scrape on my wrist. I just don't know what to believe anymore. One minute, my parents are visiting. Things are fine, and the next, it boils over where a man is supposed to sleep. I told them we live together. We're an adult couple, and yes, we share a bed. But my mom reacted like I had committed some kind of sin. She was so focused on what she believed was right that she ignored everything else. It's exhausting having to defend basic relationship boundaries to people who are supposed to be supportive. Was I wrong for being open about our life? Or was my mother just fundamentally out of touch Reality. What would you have done when the conversation escalated so quickly? Maybe I should have checked in with her sooner. The week after they left was a tightrope walk of forced smiles and awkward silences. My mom kept calling, not to ask how I was, but to psychoanalyze our relationship dynamics. Even worse, my boyfriend started pulling away. He would flinch when I touched his arm or give me these quick, dismissive glances across the room. Then last night, he deleted an entire chat thread, dozens of shared jokes and plans, leaving nothing but a vague message deleted where our memories had been. It felt deliberate. Our easy intimacy was replaced by a careful performance of normalcy. But that was not the worst part. This morning, I found a folded receipt tucked into his coat pocket, and it wasn't from anywhere near our house or work. The date on it was 3 days from now, and the name written underneath belonged to someone I had never. It was always about appearances, wasn't it? My mom just kept repeating that I should be more modest, or something equally suffocating. She made it sound like my 3 years of happiness were somehow inappropriate. We tried to laugh it off, but when she started insisting that you couldn't just sleep together, the air got thick. It wasn't even a demand. It was an indictment. I kept telling her we were adults, that this was our life now. And frankly, her constant policing felt suffocating. She didn't listen, just watching my stepfather intervene, trying to smooth over the tension, made me realize how little control she really had. Honestly, you know who stood up for us when it mattered? Not him. It was Aunt Clara, making sure no one left before we could even talk about what she saw on my phone. It was never really about the couch. I realized once the silence settled after they left, it was always about control, wasn't it? My mother didn't care if we were intimate. She cared who dictated our boundaries. She needed to remind me that I was still under her authority, even though I had built a life completely separate from her expectations. The argument wasn't a disagreement about propriety at all. It was a performance of ownership. And suddenly, the memory hit me, a detail I'd always dismissed as unimportant. When she left, she tucked my ring set away in the junk drawer, but she only put back the little silver box that held the photograph of you two from college. She wasn't just controlling my relationships. She was curating them, and when I went to check it later, I found that the picture of us together had been subtly changed. It didn't end there, though. The moment my car pulled away, everything shifted. My mom started calling me nonstop, not just about the sleeping arrangement, but about how I was raising myself. Then came the text messages from my aunt, and even some people from work who supposedly saw pictures of us together and started asking questions. It felt like everyone suddenly had an opinion. Suddenly, it wasn't just my mother's judgment. It was a whole jury of family friends, coworkers, neighbors. Everyone was sending me little comments about decency and respect. They were whispering that I was careless, that I needed to tone it down. It made me feel isolated, like I was standing alone against this massive wall of traditional expectation. Who do you think they really believe in? Tell me in the comments. But when the dust cleared, all the voices faded, and it was clear where everyone had taken their side. The call from my aunt was supposed to be supportive, but something about her tone felt forced, too saccharine, like she was performing sympathy for my parents. I kept replaying the words, the way Mom called me sinful, the judgment in her voice. But then I found that old box in the attic, the one filled with pictures of my childhood, and tucked inside a faded album page, there was a medical record, dated years before I even knew what that meant. It wasn't mine, it was his. A DNA test result. It proved he wasn't just someone who was asterisk visiting my life. He was connected to something much deeper, something my mother had spent her whole life trying to keep silent. He's not who I thought he was, and they knew it all along. I just stared at the name on that sheet of paper until the sound of their voices drifted down the hall and I couldn't breathe. The silence after they left was deafening. Everything felt tainted by her judgment, every laugh echoing with accusation. I remember looking at him, really looking at the 3 years we'd built a life on, feeling that sickening mix of defiance and paralyzing fear. Should I just concede to keeping the peace? Let it fade back into just friends? Because the alternative was this storm. My hands were shaking, a tremor starting deep in my chest. Then he reached out, not to me, but to distract me, telling me I needed to think about what they said. I felt trapped, like my choices weren't mine at all. But I looked back at him, and the doubt finally evaporated, replaced by something terrifyingly real. The silence when they finally left was worse than the shouting. It felt like we were suspended in a bubble of judgment, waiting for the inevitable fallout. My mom's texts weren't just arguments. They were carefully constructed moral indictments, painting me as sinful and selfish. She didn't just disagree with us. She tried to rewrite our entire history, making everything I do sound like a personal betrayal of her teachings. And now my aunt is involved, amplifying the narrative until it's impossible to know what is actually true anymore. When does protecting your core happiness become an unforgivable sin? It hurt more than I expected when she called me sinful, like that single word could negate 3 years of my happiness or invalidate every choice I make now that I'm an adult. I understand her intentions came from a place of care, but they were also rooted in fear, the fear of change, the fear of what she didn't understand about modern love. Ultimately, I realized that while I might need my parents' blessing to move out, I could never wait for their approval to live authentically. with someone I love. My life and my relationship was mine to define. It feels like a battle between tradition and personal freedom. And honestly, neither side seems to have the perfect answer. What do you think? Tell me in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that follow button for more stories